Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Future in Review podcast. I'm here today with one of our more regular guests, Mark Anderson. Mark is chair of FIRE and CEO of SNS, and he's also CEO of the machine learning company Pattern. He's also, as Future in Review is a family company, my dad. So we're going to have some fun here today talking about Sam Altman, Nvidia, AMD, and Sam Altman's LLM Desperation tour, which is currently on. To bolster the OpenAI valuation and stock price. Mark, welcome. Great to see you again.
Thank you, Berit. Good to be here.
So you wrote this week in the SNS Global Report, which we publish every week, the most accurate source of predictive information about technology as it drives the global economy.
Yes, ma'am.
You wrote about LLMs as mirrors as opposed to windows.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that you could start us off today by bringing this podcast audience, which may be a little bit different than that audience, up to speed on what exactly that means. For those who have not read your report,
Sure.
What does that mean?
Sure. We've been working for a while now, as Berit knows, on looking at AI and LLMs, machine learning, and particularly at LLMs, trying to get out of the valley hype circle and get really serious about reducing things to their most simple components so that we can talk to them like we'll talk to you now. And at the moment, at least, the simplest way to do that I have found after, as I mentioned, more than a year, I think, of working on this is that some of you who are members of our team will know this already. I made up a new term. I said that AGI, which stands for Artificial General Intelligence, was not actually what was happening. And the promises of that were wrong. They were incorrect. They were technically wrong. And that if we looked at the internet, what's on it, all the writing and all the images and so forth, what we were seeing was not AGI, but AGB. In other words, we're seeing the behavior of human beings writ large. That's what's on the internet. And when you have a system technically like an LLM, a large language a model, what it's doing is it's just looking and remembering what's there. It's finding the behavior of human beings for all time as far as being written down. And that's very useful, but never to be confused with what it's being sold as. And so we're trying to break through that a little bit.
Which would be a thinking machine, yeah. I think. Right. So we're making the distinction between remembering what has been and what has occurred versus coming up with new ideas or coming up with new concepts that have not yet been invented.
That's right. So not only is AGI, in terms of this particular technology, should be AGB, but the words that the Valley makes up to market all this are also. So when you're told that the machine is thinking, no, it's not thinking. You're told that it's rationalizing nope. When you're told that it's, there's so many silly things that are said about this really good chat system. It's a really good chat system that we just need to kind of get beyond that, and including being creative or inventing or none of those hallucinating. It makes mistakes that are life-threatening. Don't call them hallucinations. It's not dreaming. It's just lying. It's just making crap up. So we need to be kind of brutally honest, I think, about the technology so that by doing that, we get a better understanding of what's happening.
Right. And so for people who have watched this podcast or listened to this podcast before, however you consume it, I think they've heard that from us a lot. We've talked about that concept many times. I think what's different about what you were writing about this week is the specific framing, right, of memory versus remembering.
Yes.
You wrote a lot about humans are bad at remembering, and this is actually like a very useful skill to have an artificial tool helping us with our memory. But we're very good at thinking and coming up with new ideas and new analysis.
Yeah. So, the title of this piece was Language Models, Mirrors versus Windows. And the idea was if you have a technology which is reflecting yourself back to yourself, that's a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
It's not,
Which is what we have with LLMs.
that's what LLMs are.
Mm-hmm.
And contrary, if you were being told you were looking out through this to this beautiful landscape of innovation, that's not true.
But that is what Sam Altman is currently pushing.
Correct.
On the Desperation tour that we're about to talk more about.
Tour. I like that term. We just made that. So the Sam Altman Desperation tour. Yeah. And then what I did is I made a little dive down to say, look, let's talk about intelligence because we don't know what it is really. No one agrees about it. Maybe we can say a few things about it that are useful in this conversation. And I thought to separate memory from intelligence was the way to go. So people could look at that and say, I get the difference. Although, as you know, all of us in grade school or high school, we were ourselves or had friends, kids who were friends, who had super memories, and they always got A's. But they weren't getting A's because they were geniuses. They got A's because they had really, really good memory.
Mm-hmm.
And they would just...
This is why I did terribly in biology, actually, because biology was all about just memorizing facts, which I was not good at. But I was really interested in what was happening and why.
Yeah. Such different... Yeah, so I thought that by honing in on that idea of the difference between memorizing things as a mental ability or a machine ability and inventing or creating things, innovating things, that would clearly pull these things apart, which is back to the title again. So I think people understand that,
Mm-hmm.
We've all been there and we know the difference. And we all have personal stories about the difference between memorizing 20 pages of text in 6th grade for a test compared to thinking of something new that no one had ever thought of before.
Right.
I gave a short example about writing a letter to Werner von Braun when I was 8 years old. And he was in a rut at the time. He was making these rockets that were one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other. And in each case, they had all the fuel in each module. So he was lifting all this fuel up into outer space at a huge expense, I think. So I told him to put all the rockets at the bottom. And my point wasn't how bright I was, but it was a pretty good idea. Now they're all done that way. But point was, if he had an LLM at that time, and he asked his LLM what to do, it would have told him to put one more rocket on the top because that's what was happening. It would have read everything in the world and said, here's how you do it. Add one more. Whereas what he wanted to do was be thoughtful, creative, the way a human being could be, and innovate and put all the rockets at the bottom and then burn all the fuel as fast as possible. So I just want to use that as an idea of the difference between those two things of memorizing. So that's what LLMs do every day, or being really creative.
I wish it was just memorizing, though, because if it was just memorizing and it was dependable memorizing, then we wouldn't be dealing with all the problems of hallucinations, right? So I think it's also important to realize that, like, it's memorizing with just, like, some blatant lies thrown in.
Yeah.
And most of the time, the memorizing is actually quite helpful. But sometimes, because of the blatant lies, it becomes really not helpful.
Right.
It can actually throw things off.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I think we've redefined the semantics involved here, including hallucinations, life-threatening mistakes. And then we see a lot of things where people are claiming there are guardrails. I don't even like that term. It implies safety. You're never safe. It's been pretty much proven scientifically, guardrails or no, you will never be safe from hallucinations.
Right.
Ever. Not with that tech. And then you have things like, they act in various ways with reinforcement learning and human interactions to get better and better. That's true. Mm-hmm. But you can't be safe by just using a well-curated data set. That's not going to work.
Yeah, and that's been true for a long time, long before, OpenAI launched ChatGPT. People were using reinforcement learning to make algorithms better. And humans were always a part of algorithms because they kept going off. They kept getting kind of like, after a while they would wave. And I have many friends who worked in machine learning for a long time at large tech companies before LLMs came out.
Yeah.
And there was never a time when humans were not involved in the fine tuning of those algorithms. They wound up having to be rehumanized essentially every little bit.
It's always been an interactive, iterative story. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the Desperation tour, because this is where
Sure.
things. So Sam is in kind of a I would say, he's not necessarily known for being the most truthful or humble of CEOs in Silicon Valley, and his current status is he needs to raise more money than is humanly possible in order to keep OpenAI moving. And so, in order to do that, he's going around and meeting with all of these chip companies and other companies, but primarily chip companies at the moment, and putting together deals that may or may not actually happen in the future, but will, in the current moment, boost his overall stock price
Yep.
and ability and valuation specifically.
Yep.
What is your opinion of the specific deals with Nvidia, AMD, and Broadcom?
And Oracle and
And
SoftBank and I think Sam knows how much money he needs to raise every month, literally every minute, every week. And because he's fully aware of that, he knows that the expense of staying ahead of the game, which means that he's got to be essentially trying to beat benchmark results from Google and Microsoft and others, is very expensive. It's more expensive than he has money coming in. And so he's constantly raising money. And for a while, it felt like he was like a normal pitch guy, entrepreneur raising money, and he knew where we'd go, and then he'd, win the race. But there's no end to this race. Oops. So suddenly you're in a race with no end. And although he has fast growing revenues, I don't see the indication, and I don't think anybody does, that he's going to be able to make enough money to pay for the costs. So his burn rate is terrific and getting higher, and he's got to run faster and faster on bigger and bigger data sets. Bigger data sets cost more money to do the runs on, and then he's got other complicating factors like China probably half cheats, copies Meta, free open source stuff, and they probably did a little jailbreak on OpenAI's thing and took it without permission. But the fact is that they aren't the only ones who have done very cheap jobs compared to Sam, and created similar, if not better, results at much, much, much less money.
Right. I mean, and DeepSeek famously is like significantly more efficient, right? So it needs less compute and less energy to run and train.
There are various tricks for doing that. Yep.
So we've got this, like what we're looking at now. If you think about OpenAI, they're at a $500 billion valuation. They've got 13 billion in revenue, and they have 800 million weekly active users. Meanwhile,
because I don't like those numbers. They're too much smoke. But you're right. The numbers are right.
Every company in the Valley, though, they all have this number, and they use it to and there's very little transparency into whether or not it's actually true.
What they mean.
Yeah. So many of them interpret it very different ways.
Yes.
That being said, so with those numbers, they have apparently Sam Altman told their team this week that they're trying to build out 26 gigawatts of chips from Nvidia, AMD, and Broadcom. Well, that's just the numbers that they're doing now.
Yeah.
They've just ordered. But they're trying to build out 250 gigawatts of computing power by 2023, which would take $10 trillion. So we're looking at basically $10 trillion over
33, I think, right? 33?
2023.
Yeah.
Yeah.
10 you're out there. 10 trillion. Rolls off the tongue.
What do you think is going to happen with these deals?
It's ridiculous. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. It's patently absurd. And he ought to get a special award just for having the nerve to say $10 trillion. There's no universe that I live in where that's going to happen. Period. He's not going to raise. It's not going to happen. So this circular firing squad business model thing he's got going right now, where I'll pay you on Tuesday if you pay me on Wednesday for what I did on Monday. I'll get the other guy to pay us on Thursday for what you did on Tuesday. Then he can pay back to you on Monday what I did on Friday. Like, what? What? How'd that work? And none of these are real dollars. So he left the world of the living, in terms of entrepreneurs making a pitch, and he entered this whole new scale it as you wish world where you're paying with future revenues, the chances of which you are achieving are not only vanishingly small, if not zero, but it is a circle. And so you're promising this to Larry, and then Larry's promising this to SoftBank. SoftBank's promising this back to somebody else, and then you get your money back. No. I mean, everyone knows it's a joke.
I mean, Larry, when you say Larry just to be clear, Larry Ellison from Oracle. Yeah.
Son at SoftBank, and all these people are part of Stargate or whatever they're going to be part of. It's future money that I think will never happen.
And if we look at it's interesting because I think, OpenAI started off this way. We were talking about this earlier, but when they first launched, they had this massive deal with Microsoft, which later turned out to be mostly based on compute cycles. Yeah. In fact, almost entirely, I think. And they had similar deals that they spun up with other cloud computing companies as well, right? At that point, all of the cloud computing companies were kind of going after who's going to have the best model and have access to the best model. And now we've kind of shifted. We've gone back one step. It's like one step removed to the next level, which is the chip companies. And so it's interesting because I'm not sure if there's a step after the chip companies, but the chip companies are also in, kind of in all of this ecosystem of cloud and chips, which powers the cloud, which runs the models, which don't actually work all the way, and who's actually going to be using them, and will it be smaller or bigger than what people are actually telling us? We clearly think it's smaller. Not none, but a lot less than what's being promised right now. Probably not $10 trillion worth of data centers.
No.
So I guess my question here is, how does this end?
I've got a kind of a waypoint in mind.
Okay.
So you mentioned gigawatts, which is never how anyone has ever talked about computing until now. It's really cute. Everyone says, how many gigawatts are you going to build? I'm going to build 10. I'm going to build 20. But I've recently seen the idea of how many gigawatts does it take to power Manhattan. So I think the next step in removing yourself completely from all forms of reality will be Manhattans. How many Manhattans do you need? Oh, I'd take 20 of those, right?
Is what I thought.
Maybe 100 Manhattans would be good. Let's do 100 of those. And then no one will have any idea what you're talking about. But as you and I have discussed, that doesn't matter because your stock will go up. And that really is what's happening. So every time the circular firing squad model is fired again, the company they did the deal with, Oracle or whoever it's going to be, so-and-so, goes up 20%. Because the Wall Street guys are just putting up a new spreadsheet. And look, if they got $10 trillion, they'd be worth more money. And they actually do that. People actually are buying into it on some scale. Breathtaking. I think we should try and do it somehow. I don't know how to work that out. But
So coming back to my question though, what is the end point of that?
Oh, it's 100 Manhattans.
No, what happens?
Maybe we could have a Paris Manhattan and Moscow have a.
We're gonna make 10 trillion Manhattans.
Yeah, I mean clearly.
It's like a new model.
Yeah, I don't think that the revenues are going to catch up. And what most smart people say about things like this is they say it's like building out the railroads. And so it may be, people remember a huge amount of, matter of fact, we have a very good friend, Bill Janeway, who specializes in this kind of thing, where you look at the history of building out the Industrial Revolution or the history of building out the railroads. Everyone got hurt, but the rich got richer. And so, if you're one of the 5 people or companies that really made it, terrific.
Right.
But there were 5,000 companies that didn't make it. And so I think the quasi-wise attitude that's being taken by people who are pretty smart is, well, that's going to happen. Don't get too excited. That's going to happen. And all these guys, you're going to lose money, but I'll be in the hunt. I'm Microsoft or I'm, Google. We'll be in the hunt still, and so we don't care. We'll benefit. All the other guys who are putting their money in, they're going to go bust.
I mean, I think the cloud companies and the chip companies will be relatively okay because there's enough of other things that they're doing that they're not so dependent on LLMs. They seem to be using this moment to continue to inflate.
It's hard to know, Berit. So, we would have to figure out some pretty fancy mathematics to say, let's say that the actual demand backed up by actual enterprise money, which was the original business model, not by consumers, which was actually where it's going right now.
Right.
And that got reawakened. And then the total, over 5 or 10 years of real demand by real money with real work being done in real enterprises would support X at a certain rate of subscribing. And the worry here would be, what if you already built out X times 1,000 data centers or gigawatts or Manhattans?
Yeah, Manhattan.
Now, who gets hurt?
Let's use the standardized.
One of the examples is the internet itself, where a lot of people got hurt in telecom and broadband. But here we have it. We're talking using that, and so it worked. But if you're asking how the chip companies or how the cloud companies are going to do, I think you'd have to ask, are they prepared for the haircut that's going to happen here if they actually built the data centers and signed the contracts to pay for that? That's a pretty big question, because there were some big telecom companies that didn't make it. Really big companies. So, yeah, okay, maybe you don't get to make it. Maybe somebody else made it. You didn't survive. It's a big crunch, is what I'm trying to say. It's a big haircut. Yeah.
And, we're seeing already some of those companies like walking back some of those data center projections.
Yes. The smarter ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not all of them.
No.
I don't think, for example, that Amazon is walking back data centers.
I don't think they are.
I think Microsoft has been.
They have been carefully, quietly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They've let leases go, and they've cut back a little bit on the money, and they cut back a little bit on the plans. And what they're also doing, which I really admire, is the opposite of the gigantic hype machine behind the Desperation tour. So they're not only, I believe they're separating themselves pretty clearly from OpenAI, legally and PR fashion, communications, and also in what they owe, what they're going to put in. They refuse to keep paying Sam's daily diet of billions of dollars. They're not doing that anymore. And even in cycles, they're doing some, but not very much. And I like their attitude of, we're going to hide this whole, not just the word OpenAI, but we're going to hide the whole idea of the hype. And we're going to just slip this stuff inside every product we've got. And we're just going to tell you that it's going to be better for you. And we'll give it a fairly safe name like Copilot. So it implies that you're the pilot. Now we're back to the thing that I wrote last week, because if you're the pilot, the relationship probably will end up being your innovation abilities and your intelligence abilities combined with the co-pilot. It's the fairly stupid but extremely powerful memory to you from everything ever written. Great combination. You're going to be Superwoman, but it won't be AGI. It'll be you. It'll be super person.
Right. And this is what I wrote about coming out of Fortune as well. I was at Fortune Brainstorm a month ago, maybe.
Park City.
And all of the CEOs there were talking, or CMOs, Chief Executive Officers, Chief X Officers, CXOs, were talking about how they're actually using artificial intelligence and LLMs and how it's all being driven by humans.
Yeah.
And all of the limitations that they're experiencing in integrating LLMs into their teams.
Yes.
So that's I think we're seeing the haircut play out in many places, not just within companies that are like the data center companies, but also within companies that are using LLMs, which were very eager to rush in and try them and try experiment with
Right,
all different
right.
models.
And you and I briefly discussed the pay for CEOs who are signing these deals. Generally, it's true, not always, that their pay is based on earnings, and the
Right.
earnings are quarterly, announced quarterly. And so they get a pay boost just by signing the deal, right? Sign the deal, your
Just,
stock.
just to clarify, we're now back to talking about specifically the chip companies on the Desperation tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And pretty much anybody involved, if you're involved in whatever, from CoreWeave out to somebody, it's, you sign the deal and the Wall Street guys give you a 20% boost right there. And so your pay just went up at least that much, probably. Much.
This has been in publicly traded companies a really big challenge for a long time, because you're not able to make any kind of long-term planning, really. Like, it makes it very difficult to do long-term planning when every quarter you have to maximize profits. It's also part of why Michael Dell, you interviewed him on stage at Fire just before he was about to take Dell back from public back to private, right? That's why he did that as well.
Biggest transaction at the time.
And we're starting to see more companies move in that direction for similar reasons.
Yeah. And you're also seeing analysts start to throw the brakes in and go, wait a minute. I'm having trouble here. My spreadsheet isn't working properly. Get to the 10, whatever number, how many Manhattans you're talking about here. Doesn't work. And so the stocks are, I think they're getting wobbly. There's a suspension of disbelief, but not that much.
Are there other spaces that are in the tech industry? So I think we're in this very interesting time where we're seeing this massive overcapitalization. I mean, even Jerome Powell, right, is like, hey, the AI thing is maybe a little bit worrying for the U.S. economy, and which is not something that we would normally do. And at the same time, we're cutting back funding for more traditional innovation, which is like the smaller companies, the startups, the academic innovation that has been historically such a strong driver of the U.S. economy.
Yes.
That combination to me is worrying.
Yes. This reminds me, just hearing you talk about it, Berit, there was a project called the Big Dig. America was going to go its own way, not like CERN, where all these European companies were involved in particle physics build out. And so we were going to go our own way. They started this thing in Texas. They made a big hole, a really, really, really big hole.
There's also a big dig in Boston and NCS.
Bigger than that, bigger than Storrow Drive. And so it became clear to the physics community that it was supposed to be benefiting, that no one was going to get any money forever and ever, amen, for their own projects, because it was all going to go into this gigantic black hole in Texas. And so they complained.
When was this? What era are we talking?
Oh, I don't know. It's probably 20 years ago. And they complained that they didn't like the whole thing, and they wanted to cancel the project, which had been their project, because it was going to destroy all the funding for everyone by overreaching on the costs of the Big Dig. And they finally didn't do it. They probably filled it with used cars or something. And then they all joined CERN, which is what they should have done to begin with. And now, if you're in Texas and you're a physics guy, you go to CERN and you do your work and then you come back. And so, and we have other places in the U.S. So there's a pretty good history of blowing it. Mm-hmm. With that money just went into the ground. It didn't achieve anything. And, do you have, there are a lot of words for that, but do you have money? Do you have capital that has just gone into the ground, basically, and it's not becoming useful? I just got to say that if we're right about the nature of this technology, you're making a bet not just about scale, but about quality. And if it turns out that all we're doing with these systems is bigger and bigger and bigger, but not better, really, not really, in terms of doesn't think, doesn't rationalize, doesn't, all that stuff that you're being sold doesn't happen, then the risk goes way up. It's not just about scaling too much. It's about being dumb about what you were scaling. Taken for a ride.
I mean, at the core of it, even the internet bubble at least was built on something real,
Yes.
right? Like it was overinflated, but there was a core economic like
Yeah.
bottom
And the
level there.
railroad, it really worked. It did
Hmm.
as promised. Same with, woolen mills back in the Industrial Revolution. It really worked. This stuff is being sold as something that doesn't do. By the way, it doesn't have any moat either. So, when a VC talks to you like, what's your moat? And they're expecting you to say, well, I've got a proprietary mathematics, and I got a
Hmm.
proprietary code here, and no one's ever going to figure that out, and we'll be safe when we invest. You'll be safe. But that's not true, really. This is all from one ancestral family tree, came out of Google DeepMind years ago. Everyone pretty much, in a way, has the same stuff, but they have different settings, different parameters, hyperparameters, and so on. So it's not unlikely that there will be another DeepSeek from China or Indonesia or whatever. And once Mark Zuckerberg made his kind of Johnny come lately, um, as open source, then
You mean llama?
game over. Yeah, game over. Any teenager can take it down and make his own, a Berit version and a Mark version, and we'll be really, really rich for about a minute. But it'll take the complete floor out in terms of people who are charging to get to their $10 trillion moment. Not going to happen, I don't think.
So you're saying if that's true, which I think I'm not questioning whether or not it's true in your mind. I think it probably is true. But if that is true, then the problem becomes, okay, we're promising still $10 trillion.
Basing the investment on the money coming in.
We've got 13 billion annually right
Yeah,
now, and that number they're projecting to go up. But actually, if there's a million open AIs and a million models, and you don't have to pay open AI's fees, then maybe it goes down.
yeah. In this situation, you might expect uh, one brand maybe to be able to make big money on this, and then everybody else gets hammered.
Okay, so I want to introduce one potential like wrench in this
Mhm.
equation though, which is Johnny Ive, who is building a device for OpenAI currently.
Yeah,
What I could see being interesting is Johnny coming
yeah.
in, reinventing a mobile device that you don't have to be like, they're trying to make it so it's like you're not having the thing in your face all the time and you're not always depressed, and it's useful but not so pervasive essentially.
It's not a smartphone.
Yeah, exactly. It's not actually a device. It's something that you can use, to my understanding, without it being taking up all of your attention and energy. That if that if they pulled that part off, that I could actually see being a revenue generator in the long term.
Could be. Never say never. But there's a couple of problems. One is the human brain uses visual. The design of our brain is the optical nerve has the largest claim on your brain of all your senses by far. And if
Hmm.
you forego that, how do you get the throughput, the bandwidth between the system and you? So you can't really drop the idea of visual. And you go, okay, wait, I'm not going to drop it. I mean, you've seen like those little dependents,
Yeah, yeah, they don't work.
what if you go, okay, well, we'll use the Ray Bans, do the Zuckerberg copycat thing of
Right. We've got visual interface in some
yeah, there's
ways
a
through the
little thing
glasses.
there,
Yeah.
and maybe possible, but maybe people would rather have a smartphone. And there's a visual aid which isn't right in front of their face, or they don't want to wear glasses.
Hmm.
So then you're being Elon country where you just implant something and you get the stimulus of the picture in your brain through your optic nerve without anything. That's in some ways that's actually more likely than the Ray Bans in a way. But I don't think there are that many people who want to have chips implanted in their brain.
I think you'd be
Or
surprised.
maybe, or baseball caps with.
I know a lot of people that would volunteer to have the chips implanted in their brain right now.
Okay, we'll see. I hope not, actually, but for other reasons.
I'm pretty sure that's the point of all the information warfare, that it's driving people apart right now. It's just like make them feel so crazy all the time that they say yes to the chips.
Yeah, maybe. It's not a happy thought to me. So anyway, I think Johnny's great, but his level of play, which is fantastic, still you're not going to change our human brain. So he's going to be constrained in what his freedom is in terms of inventing totally new types of products.
Right.
Yeah, you can have a smaller screen or a left and right screen or a screen on the back of your hand, but you need to see things somehow.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Yeah.
I don't think that necessarily changes the fact that they could somehow disrupt the mobile market with
Well, that's
his
possible.
design skills.
Or add to it, let's say. But I think people are not that excited about surveillance. Some don't care, younger ones apparently, but a lot do. And so, when you sell the Ring doorbell or when you sell all these things which are Alexa or surveilling your room, I would never do that. I have Alexa, I never use it. So I don't want to have someone listening to me constantly and then taking all that as data going into that's what Mark's doing.
Mark, I don't know how to tell you this, but you have one of these too.
That's true.
That means that you also are doing that now.
And they lie to us about whether it's listening to us or not, as we all know.
Yeah. So you are doing it.
It's sucky, not in a good way. I don't like it, and I like this.
We love your devices. We think you're great.
Yeah. I like the thing where the teacher tells the kids to put all their stuff in a Faraday bag when they get to school. That's what I like.
Yeah, it's great. Works really well for the kids.
It's better for the kids.
They don't like it at first, and then they like it at the end.
That's right. That's right. So I think that there's a blowback coming from super surveillance, where it's kind of fun to have that in glasses for a little while, and then you go, wait a minute, every bit and byte is going to Mark Zuckerberg. I don't trust him as far as I can throw him, and I'm not going to do that. I believe there will be a serious number of people, part of the market, that just won't even touch it. And in Mark's case, he's got a really horrible track record. So everything
gets worse all the time, unfortunately.
How much did you spend on VR after it was already blown up 10 times?
You keep thinking, oh, maybe he can't be more evil than he's already been. And then...
Strong word. But yeah. Or
I stand by it.
That's wrong. Yeah.
No, I think he deliberately creates products that manipulate people.
Wrong and evil. You better have few.
I would call that evil because he knows the type of mental harm he's causing to an entire generation, at least.
Yeah, you're right.
Multiple generations, and he's not doing anything about
it. I say you're right because people have written books about it from inside the company. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Yep, we've been briefed on that.
All right. Well, I think that's about all the time that you and I have for today.
So, it's a mirror, not a window. It's memory, not intelligence.
The Desperation Tour is fueling it.
Boy.
And the future
100 Manhattans.
of mobile.
100 Manhattans. That's what I want.
Energy is still a good investment.
Yes. For a while. What happened? We overbuild that. Maybe the true benefit of all this will be, despite the hype and the lies and the mistakes about the technology, that we did need energy. And instead of destroying the planet by building out all this stuff, we'll end up having most of it be solar, and it'll be good for us. It'll be a great thing if that happens.
Move it over from the data centers to powering everything else.
Yep.
All right. Well, best wishes for that future.
My golly, let's go get it.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you for another great conversation. I'll see you again soon on another episode of the Future in Review podcast.
Bye-bye.